Good evening and welcome to the Facilities Committee meeting of Tuesday, June 20th. I am Nancy Monahan, the chair, and joining me is Susan Stern as vice chair, Sarah Dunn, Lydia Solomon, Dr. Batchelor, and Bridget Walsh is our student representative. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Dolan for administrative remarks.
Thank you, Mrs. Monahan. I'd just like to welcome tonight Damian Spar, who's representing Site Logic, and he's here for agenda item 4.01. That's regarding the construction management services for the new Ithan project. So we'll talk about that in a few minutes. And then also Assistant Superintendent Dan Bechtold's with us. He's on hand to talk about a high school project that we'll look at as part of the 4.02 agenda item when we're updating the capital projects list for the coming school year. And that'll conclude introductions, and we can get on with our agenda.
Great, thank you very much. Is there any public comments in the audience? And none online? Okay, moving on to the review of minutes. We have the May 23rd, 2023 Facilities Committee meeting minutes. Has everyone had an opportunity to review?
Yes.
I got the curriculum ones too.
Oh, on board docs, the right ones were there.
Okay.
We'll trust you, Susan.
I say, if you've reviewed them,
So we have reviewed them, and we have reviewed them. Thank you so much. Next on the agenda is item number 4.01, to award the RFP to Site Logic for new Ithan Elementary School construction management services. The administration recommends approving Site Logic as the construction management services firm for the new Ithan Elementary School project at a total cost of $929,500. Solicitations were requested through a request for proposal, with Site Logic being the recommended firm. The administration will enter into an agreement with Site Logic pending final legal review, with work anticipated to begin in July 2023. So I will turn this over to Mr. Dolan for further.
It's never good
comments.
when doing your introductions you skip over your boss, but Brian Pauling is with us also tonight to help with this agenda item. So I'm going to turn it right over to Brian.
Thanks, Bill. Okay. I still have to do your evaluation yet, don't I?
I think so.
So, good evening, everyone. So, we, as we've discussed at the board meeting last month, and as we've been discussing for a long time now, the project work at Ithan Elementary that we're looking to build a new school in the next few years. We went and solicited proposals for construction management services for the project. So the construction manager will basically oversee the entire project, work with our architect, and they represent us as the owners of the property. When we do the construction, they would be coming on during the design phase and then work for us all the way through the end of the construction phase and represent us with the contractors, work with our architect, anything that's related to the construction project, giving updates to the board, the community. It's pretty much an all-encompassing job that the construction management firm does. So we solicited RFPs. We had 6 firms that we had solicited proposals from. We had 4 responses to our process, or to our proposal process. We had a pre-meeting on May 25th to go over the scope of the project with the firms that were interested in responding. We went through with Mr. Dolan, Mr. Behrens, and myself the scope of the work so that the firms knew what we had done so far as design work at the elementary school for the key design and some of the things that we talked about at the meeting a few weeks ago. We asked for the proposals back on June 1st, and because of knowing we weren't going to have a meeting in July because of where we were in the timing phase of the project, we were a little bit on an accelerated time schedule, so we tried to walk the vendors through that and make sure that they would be able to provide responses and they were acceptable with the time frame that we had to do all of this. So we had gotten those responses back on June 1st. We had set up interviews on June 7th after we reviewed the proposals. We had 3 firms back that we interviewed. We asked a number of questions. We had the firms go through their proposal. So we spent close to an hour with each firm talking to them about what would go into the project, some thoughts that they had on the schedule, the scope of the work, things that they would be bringing to the table. After the interviews, we followed up with 2 firms. We had asked some follow-up questions and information, and then we went through the evaluation process with the team, Dr. Batchelor, Mr. Dolan, myself. Mrs. Monahan was in the interviews. And ultimately, we came to the recommendation that we're making tonight to recommend SiteLogic at the total cost for $929,500, which is slightly under the budget that we had estimated for construction management services at about $976,000 when we presented the budget last month at the board meeting for the Ithan project. So just some rationale. We went through and looked at this. We checked references. I had previously worked with SiteLogic at a prior district. I worked with Mr. Spar on some projects. I worked with Mike Crane, who would be kind of the oversight management for SiteLogic on some previous projects that I had experience. The only person we didn't have experience was with their day-to-day on-site representative that they were proposing to use on our project. I called 3 very well-respected facilities directors in southeastern Pennsylvania, all of which gave glowing recommendations to Bill Minahan, who would be our on-site manager working with SiteLogic. In fact, one of them that I won't name was looking to maybe hire him for one of their projects they had upcoming. So they were very complimentary of Bill and having experience with him as the on-site. They have a very robust K-12 experience, just some school districts that they've done work for on similar projects: Neshaminy, Great Valley, Bristol Township, North Hills, Lower Merion, Cannon McMillan out in Pittsburgh area, Altoona, the Montgomery County IU. So we got great references from my experience, and then from the people that we called. Their list of K-12 experience is extensive. And just some other things that they kind of brought to the table. Their interview was very well. They came in prepared to the interview. We talked about the project schedule. They came into the interview with some proposed alterations and some options for us on the schedule where we could maybe make some adjustments to save some time. They came into the interview prepared for that. And then follow up after the interview, there was a lot of dialogue that Mr. Spar initiated, calling me to say, hey, I have a thought about this. What do you think about this? Or would it be helpful if I gave you this information? So there was a lot of proactivity, and I think they really showed that they were eager to work with Radnor Township School District again. And when I say again, SiteLogic had Reynolds, let me go back, Reynolds, who was a construction management company, became SiteLogic a few years ago. Reynolds was our construction manager at the middle school project a number of years ago. They also did some management work at Ithan Elementary School. And I believe Mike Crane, who would be involved in this project, was involved in at least the middle school project. I'm not sure about Ithan, but he was involved in that when he came in for the interview. He recognized Mr. Bryan, and they were talking about the middle school project. And so they do have some familiarity with the district, and we didn't hear any negative references from anybody that we could reach on the work that was done here previously. So with all of those things, one other thing I wanted to mention, they are proposing in their response to us a scheduling software called Primavera that is going to be a very robust scheduling tool that we will use, and we can either have them or our upcoming contractor or kind of a joint effort use that scheduling software to put a schedule together and then follow that schedule. And it's very minute detail in that schedule. So there's a lot of value added to that software package as we go through the construction phase of the project as well. So overall, based on the proposal's robustness, what they're offering, what we feel they're going to bring to the table, not only in the design phase, but the personnel and the resources they're bringing during the construction phase, we're making the recommendation to move forward with them tonight.
Thank you very much. Anything else to add, Mr. Dolan?
No,
before
I
turn
want to
it
thank
over
Mr.
questions?
Pauling for spearheading the RFP process and for keeping us up to date throughout it, and also our facilities members for helping us in that process as well. I feel the same way that Mr. Pauling does about it, having reviewed all of the proposals, having read through them, and also having met the potential folks on site before the interview. So there were some site walkthroughs at Ithan. And that's a good informal opportunity to get to know and hear questions and just get a sense of the knowledge and the background and the experience that these groups could bring. And we do feel like SiteLogic is the right choice for this project.
Great. Does anyone on the board have questions? Ms. Solomon?
So this is more a history, like excavation. So after, I believe it was after the middle school project, we asked for, I believe it was Reynolds, to look at our high school and what they thought, capacity was going to be needed for the high school. And I'm trying to remember who was on that project, and I'm hoping you can help me out. There was a really, so I guess I can describe, there was a woman on the project who was really bright and had worked with Radnor before, and I think on the middle school project as well. Is she still with you, is what my question was. And
Is it possible that that was the architectural firm for that project?
Well, it wasn't a project. We were asking for capacity. So I,
Maybe like a feasibility study?
Enrollment was being looked at by the,
Yep. And I thought it
by the
was,
construction management company? By the
yeah, I
owner's rep?
thought it was Reynolds that was looking at it.
So, good evening, everyone.
You could
First
tell
of
me
all,
I'm
that's
totally
great.
wrong.
I like to come to a meeting and get a question that I don't know the answer to, and you're pretty much close to it. So back then, when your middle school project ended, Blackney Hayes was the architect on that project, and I think Darren Jellison was the project architect.
Correct.
Typically, we would not look at enrollment. In terms of who was on the project day to day, we had a man named Jerry Brandt and a project manager named Jerry Myers. So it was the Jerry, and Mike show. And I'm wondering, because we normally wouldn't look at that type of thing for demography, and even if we did now, we'd have some other partner, we wouldn't do it alone. I'm wondering if it might have been Blackney Hayes and that if they might have had somebody that was involved. I can't think that
What was the-
Blackney Hayes
Yes, I know
was the
that. And
architect.
what was the other company you just mentioned?
Only Reynolds. The only companies that I would have known that would have been involved at that time were Blackney Hayes and Reynolds. Now, was there a separate demographer that maybe you were using on that project because if there was, I might know that person.
Well, you know what, let's not go down this
I
track.
don't think it was a Reynolds
I'll try to
person.
find that out
Okay. I can look into that.
separately. Yeah, because we had a presentation from them. I just wondered if that person was still with us.
If it was demographics and the demographer was out of like Royersford, which is that's a local demographer, the woman's name might have been Linda Rothbell, and she's now, I went to school with her. So I'm at Penn State. Now, I'm not sure if that would be it, but that would be somebody close by that could be it. And I could ask as well and report back to Mr. Dolan. I'm sorry, I don't
I thought it was
have an
gonna be a
answer for
simple
that.
answer, so.
That's a good one.
Okay, any other questions? No? Ms. Dunn?
No, I think I'm good. I just want you to know, though, there are a lot of people in the community who are very frustrated with how long this project has taken at the high school. And there are a lot of really good reasons that are not any specific person's fault. But all of that's going to fall on you.
I understand.
I'm just giving you that heads up, and understand, please, that as this proceeds, if we get testy about things, it's only because there are people in the community who are testy with us about things. But I am very happy to hear that Brian has worked with your group and is very happy with you. And the middle school is lovely. So hopefully we're on a great track.
When I work with a school district, and you'll mostly see me, I'm very accessible to you, living in Ardmore much of the time. You'll hear me talk about we, and you'll hear me talking as though I'm one of us in this room. And it's because I do want the project to move. Some of you may have to tell me on occasion, to slow down a little bit, and that's okay. I can modulate everything, but I want to be able to get you good value, and I want you to be able to step through the process and not cause yourself a delay that would somehow translate into the community doesn't see it in the light that you want them to, or we're just not moving quite as deliberately as we want. And that's in the pre-construction and design and in the construction phase. You've set yourself up for a really nice setup for bidding and moving into the building. And I'm happy to push that. I'll never push it to the point where you're not getting something of quality because we're moving too fast. But please just modulate me. I listen well and obey, but I will do my best, and I do understand exactly what you're telling
Well,
me.
and you're going to have to balance that. I'm just warning you. I shouldn't warn you till after you sign. But, there's an upcoming election this fall, and we have 4 school board members who aren't even running for reelection. So we're going to have a significantly changed board starting in December, and we just need you to be mindful of that too, from the standpoint of pushing too fast. And that was one of my concerns with the 22 months versus 29 was, wait a minute, are we taking into consideration, all the work that's got to go into keeping people up to date? So, but welcome on board.
Thank you.
Well, I guess I shouldn't say that till
Well,
the board approves you,
almost,
but
Welcome, and I don't know what Ms. Dunn's talking about. I'm a peach, so. No, I'm excited. I did notice the difference in the timeline, and I really hope that we're on a 22-month. That would be fabulous for everyone involved. I am curious, I presume that the details of if we go beyond 22 months, how the structure of the contract will work in that regard if we were to go past the 22 months. But I am curious, your project up in Neshaminy School District is, the construction schedule looks to be 11 months. For a brand-new elementary school, it says November of 22 to December of 23.
Then we've written down something incorrect because we
Okay,
don't build an
because
elementary
I
school
wanted to
that
know,
fast.
could we have the 11-month?
No, we can't quite do that.
Elementary school. Okay,
We
so.
cannot quite do that. We have done an elementary school in 16 months or so.
Okay.
Which I wouldn't recommend for here. Plus, we have the 3 on the end to take down the building. We were able to take that first building down, if you're talking about Tawanka. We were able to take that building down concurrently with the other construction, which we cannot do at Ithan. So, no, I think that something is incorrect.
Oh,
in
it's
what-
13 months. I'm sorry, I'm even reading it wrong. 13.
Well, that's still.
That's
that-
aggressive.
That's still not quite right.
Okay.
I felt that saying 18 months for the construction would be tight. I was comfortable at 19. I was way more than comfortable at 20, just for the building. And what that does is, if it allows you to bid at a good time, have some time to procure, which is the way we're looking at it
Sure.
right now, then you hit the site at the beginning of the spring when the weather is appropriate and build. If you're finishing that work right before the holiday, you're not getting into that holiday lull where contractors aren't as productive as they should be. You finish that up, there doesn't need to be a lot of site presence as you're finishing punch list or making sure that HVAC systems work. Then you can slowly move in, really be ready for that push as soon as school's out, take the old building down, build the parking, and
Great.
it sets up very nicely.
Super. Well, I hope this all works out. Thank you so much for your.
Of course, thank you.
We look forward to your diligence on the project because, as Ms. Dunn said, we want this project to move smoothly and quickly because we have children being impacted every day. So, and I think that if you're in the Neshaminy project, it was a situation where you were building alongside an existing school.
That particular school was not in use.
Oh.
We've done a lot of building alongside existing
Okay.
schools. That particular one was not. The one that we're doing now, we're building an elementary school next to a middle school.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Ms. Walsh?
Not really any questions or concerns. I'm just excited because as a student who's been a part of this long construction process, it has been slightly frustrating, but you have familiarity with this concept and you've worked with our school district before, specifically, I believe, on Ithan. So you know the school, you know the layout, and I'm just excited to see what it looks like.
And we also, in our proposal, talked about having a program where we will work with the administration and potentially set up some site visits or some curriculum type things that we can do in conjunction with the things that you're teaching at all grade levels. And that's an open discussion. We'd love to do that for the districts we work for.
Great, thank you very much. And just for my own few comments, thank you for coming today. I think that we're all happy to move this forward to the regular business meeting, but I also want to recognize we had a lot of other good contenders. I think what did it for most of us, for me specifically, is the value added that you seem to provide, the expertise that you have for the middle school and our district, as well as the software resource and the systems that you have in place from a communication standpoint, I think is going to be very helpful because our community does like a lot of open transparency in a project of this size. So I think that that would be helpful.
I'm looking forward to
All right,
being part of
thank
that
you.
process. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So,
Just to reiterate on that too, we did have a lot of, this wasn't an easy decision, but we're very happy and confident about it. We talk about history a little bit too, and Mrs. Dunn's comment on the high school project. In all 6 of the folks that we did meet with, we had a lot of discussions about what it was like to build in the last 3 years, and everybody did bring up the challenges, and then Damien did as well, that it just was not a normal time to be building. Hopefully we're past that, but also we're aware of that going forward into this. And we start with a walkthrough, I think it's next Friday, where you're going to see the site and with the architects, and that's when we really start hitting the next phase. So it's great timing. So thank you for entertaining this tonight, and Damon, thank you for being here.
And I'll just add quickly, we had vetted the agreement with the construction management firm with legal, so we'll have some minor changes to make as we went through this process. We talked about a few things that we want to tweak on that, but should we get the approval at next week's meeting, we're ready to move forward with Site Logic, and we can get the documentation done pretty quickly and get them started right away.
okay, so moving on to our next agenda item is 4.02, Capital Project Fund Expenditures. The recommended action is to approve the 2023-24 Capital Project Fund expenditures as presented, and this would be a recommended action for next week's regular business meeting. The administration is recommending the approval of the plan presented. A list of previously discussed projects will be presented as well as information on proposed library refresh at Radnor High School. So I will turn it over to you once again, Mr. Dolan.
Thank you. We're going to review what we saw at our last facilities meeting, a list of capital projects projected for the coming year, and with a few updates since it was last seen. So, and then I'm going to go through this list. I have it up on the screen right now, and I will highlight a few of these items, not go through every detail because we've done that already. I do want to note that on the second column, the gym floor refinishing, we saw that number at, I think it was 48,000 before. It's a little bit more inclusive now, so that number's been updated to 64,000. So I'm sorry, 65,000. That includes the Radnor High School main gym, the back gym, a complete redo of those floors, but also what we'll call a refresh coat on all of our other gym floors throughout the district. So that number's been updated, and we've added in a project, Radnor High School library upgrades, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and Dan Bechtel's going to share with us a presentation specifically to that. I will highlight these 4 items that are over $100,000. I think they're worth a couple of words for each one, and then we'll go into questions. The first one is this asphalt resurfacing at Radnor Elementary School, and you'll see in a minute that we're doing similar work, proposing similar work at Wayne Elementary. The idea is that in this diagram here, the odd-shaped orange or yellow outline is what we call the red top or the play surface. It's a macadam asphalt surface that is cracked and in need of replacement. So we would mill it down and replace it and then repaint it. So it would come back to, we have basketball courts, play surfaces, hopscotch, a lot of different things. And our principal there, Nancy Young, would also like to add some other things to it. The red circle was redone 2 summers ago, but that hasn't been painted yet. So as part of this project, we would paint that as well. And then we would also freshen up and make repairs on those dotted red lines that you see. Those are pathways that connect us into our other play areas and back to the building. Those would not get milled and resurfaced, but they would get fixed and patched and repainted. So it's pretty all-inclusive, the back end of Radnor Elementary School. And just to give you a sense of what it looks like today, this is the condition throughout, where it's just in need. If we keep letting it go, it's going to freeze-thaw cycle is just going to break it apart, and it becomes a more expensive project over time. Another project to highlight is the Wayne RTU. That's the rooftop unit at Wayne. This is one of 6 units that was put in around 2014. This particular one has been giving us trouble ever since 2014. We believe it's a lemon. We previously went through, while it was under warranty, every step you could take to try to get it resolved and fixed. It would work for a little while. Contractor would and manufacturer would go away, think we were settled, and then a problem would resurface. And so we have, I don't have time to go into all the details over the last 10 years or so, or 8 years, but we've tried everything we can to keep it going. Right now, it's a lot of TLC from our HVAC mechanics and from our building maintenance, Andre over at Wayne, and it's just not sustainable. And it's not even reliable, even when we're over there every day babysitting it. It's not reliable. Sometimes when it's out, we've got to bring in supplementary portable units to get the space conditioned. So it's long overdue. It's a top priority at West right now. It does add up to over $250,000, but this is something we feel that we've tried everything we need to do now. The next highlight, before I bring Dan up for his high school presentation, is to talk similarly about Wayne Elementary and asphalt over there. There's 3 areas highlighted here at the bottom of the screen on the left. Actually, looks like this. I shifted the slide over, so these outlines are a little to the left of where they should be, but the bottom one is meant to highlight the parking and back drive that leads us into our utility entrance. That is in rough shape and needs to be repaved. The middle section is what we call the blue top. That's a play area in asphalt primarily right now that is, again, cracking and in need of milling and resurfacing.
And Mr. Dolan, excuse
sure.
my interruption. Just to clarify, the dollar amount for the asphalt repaving, isn't it $102,054?
Not 263.9.
Oh, you're right. Thank you for catching
Yeah,
that.
I just,
That's a copy
people who are
from
looking at it, just,
Wes is 102.
yeah.
Good catch, and I will correct that going forward. So that is the number up there.
Yeah, the HVAC was the 263.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
that's a repeat. So thank you for catching that. I'll
Yeah.
make a note of that and make a repair there. So we talked about the middle section, and then the far right is the teacher's parking lot and the drop-off loop. And again, that's cracked and in need of milling and resurfacing. So when you add those 3 sections up together, you get that 102. There's a picture of that blue top macadam surface, and you can see that it's just starting to come apart. And that is the another shot of what the conditions look like in the parking lot that leads up to our loading dock. Yep. Okay, so we're back to the list again, and maybe I'll open this up to questions right now, and then hold off on the library one, and I'll bring a separate slide up, and Dan will join us for that.
Okay, I just want to start by saying that typically, thank you for bringing this forward. I think getting back into the habit of reviewing this on an annual basis is helpful. I do want to just preface by saying that Brian Pauling has the authorization to move forward on items under $25,000.
Correct.
So I know Ms. Stern and I had an opportunity to meet with you and Mr. Pauling, and we reviewed, what you were going to be presenting tonight and made the recommendation just to highlight the big numbers that we were seeing, because in all other situations, we would move administration would move forward on some of these things that are maintenance focus anyway.
Correct, and we just want to make
But
sure
for
we're keeping.
transparency,
For
we want-
transparency.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, with that, why don't we start at this end first, Ms. Dunn?
I think all this looks great. It's always my preference we move up some of the environmentally friendly projects, but we're doing what we can this year, and I appreciate that. The one question I had about the gym floor, so when you're gonna like grind it all down to the wood, are we getting a new logo in the center of the gym?
New logo in the center of the gym.
Is it gonna be the raptor, the bird?
That is this is not, that's not the final version, but this is a version from maybe 2 months ago, and you can see the Raptor is on in a couple of places.
Okay.
Our athletic director, Mike Friel, has been working with Duncan Smith, who takes care of maintaining all these floors, and Principal Kevgis. So this has been through a few iterations with 3 different contractors that we've been looking at and getting bids from, but it'll be something similar to this, so yes, if,
Okay, and
Yeah.
it's not distracting to the students to have like the extra birds on the sides. I feel like typically there's just a logo in the center.
if you go out now to a lot of our neighborhood schools at this level, what you might have seen in pro and then college is now starting to show up in high school, which is a lot of stuff on the floor.
Okay, and there's not extra cost associated with all of that?
Not a lot. I mean, I'm sure if we said, get rid of the 2 birds, the raptors, or take away, you can't even see it here, but I
Those
think
little, are those high school logos in the,
they are. Those are high school logos at the keys. They are in the middle, and I do believe the version they're working with now has some, it has some district language that's being used, not district, but what's our governing body for, and I apologize.
The Central
I
League?
think there's some Central League branding that is showing up at all the other schools, so we're entertaining some of that. It's not shown on here.
are they paying for their Central League
I-
branding on our
I
floors?
don't know. No,
I sound cheap, but I'm actually not kidding.
no, I don't think it's, I didn't have any concern about it. I think it's more like, it may have some rules, it may have some guidelines, it may just have some, here are some of the things we expect of our spectators. I think it's all good. Do you know what I mean?
I understand what you're
Yeah.
saying, yeah. I don't know why it has to be on the floor instead of on a sign, but it's maybe
It
easier.
could be, and I'll honestly haven't delved into that level of detail with you, and we will before we approve anything.
Okay.
But just to give you a sense of it, that it's overdue for,
Oh, no, absolutely, and I appreciate that. For my money, if it were my money personally, I would only spend money on a center logo and the names on the end. I would put the Raptor in the middle and the Radnor on either end, but I'm not gonna pick a fight about it when we're over time anyway tonight.
so, and we can, I mean, Dan and I can bring that back to Mr. Smith and Principal Kevgis and Mr. Friel. And
I'm only one of 9. The other 8 may disagree.
Again, we want to get to the point where we're sitting down, looking at final drafts and saying, yeah, we can tweak this.
Ms. Stern?
Well, for what it's worth, I tend to agree with Ms. Dunn, just sometimes less is more, but what I will say is that, so thank you for bringing this to us. I'm really glad, thank you for clarifying mostly, any of the smaller items. Mr. Pauling, already has the authority, but thank you for the courtesy of letting us know. It's very typical that there would be a big list, and while I, as a board member, others might have questions, at the end of the day, we're approving a dollar amount, and it's the administration's job to maintain the buildings, and the properties. That's what we've charged you with as as employees, so thank you for doing that work. I hope the rooftop unit comes in. I hope we're able to keep our fingers crossed, because I do know that that's been a long problem, so I'm hopeful that the timing of that works out. We're trying, and I know I want to say I know you're all trying your best, and that's all we can ask of you with regard to the HVAC unit. Moving forward, just in general, like kind of big picture, you may want to think about as a district, just having a dollar amount every year that you're looking at paving, curbing, asphalt, you know, and in any given year, I would imagine there's an amount of money that you could always be spending, and then you prioritize how you're going to spend that money, kind of like how we allocate a certain amount of money every year for buses because we're always cycling through. Asphalt and curbing take a real beating around here. So thank you for identifying what you're doing this year. I pretty much expect that we'll have some curbing project or asphalt project of some degree every year.
And-
So thank you. Does the painting, the plan though is to get it done and have the asphalt cured and have the surfaces ready for the children in the fall, painted and ready to go? That's the plan?
That is the hope. That is the hope and the plan. So
Okay. All right,
some of
great.
these numbers will change a little bit, hopefully in the down direction as we finalize, you know, our bids on everything. And we'll prioritize them. And to your point, yes, we want to get this to be more proactive. If you go back to Mr. Barnaby, Leo, he would have a list where there was a certain amount of curbing going on. We need to get back to that and add some things that were never part of our preventative maintenance to begin with. So it's evolving as we come out of the reactive COVID years. We want to get back to a more proactive.
Proactive. And thank you for, the pictures really speak 1,000 words, and thank you for that, because last month I expressed concern over playground surfaces. These are not, in my world, playground surfaces. This is blacktop. This is where kids run around. So I understand why this isn't all the soft surface. When I've talked about playground surfaces and wanting soft surfaces, I meant under the playground equipment. So thank you. The pictures really clarify what we're talking about changing out this year. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Ms. Sullivan?
Yeah, so I want to backtrack on the red top and the blue top. So
Sure.
at Radnor Elementary, so isn't all of this red stuff that bouncy?
This is not what you're looking at
Just bring me up
there.
to speed. What happened? Okay.
So what you're looking at in this picture is asphalt painted, and
Okay.
it's been like that. It's been painted, probably refreshed every few years since, 21 years now since Radnor was built. In this picture, if you look at that red circle there, that at one time had
The bouncy stuff.
I wouldn't even call it bouncy, but yeah, there was a rubberized surface
Yeah.
over top of it. So you wouldn't skin your knee, but you still could get a concussion on it, for sure. And it was a constant problem because with such a large surface, it would expand and contract, it would split and curl up. Snow and ice would get under it. We would weld it back together. It would do that again. We tried 2 summers ago, it was the middle of COVID, to have 2 different companies come out and look at it. None of them would do a surface that big. They said, this is too big, we can't do it. I think, I don't quote me on the numbers, but it might have been 250,000 or 270 or something to try to get it redone, even though nobody wanted to do it. And then we ended up saving over $100,000 in removing it and going back to the asphalt surface there.
Okay. So all of this this red top at Radnor is going to be asphalt?
Correct.
There's no bouncy stuff, okay.
Correct.
And then over
It's
to Wayne.
it's worth noting that there's basketball courts within that, a lot of stuff where you bounce a ball and play. And as Mrs. Stern said, it's not an area that had any climbing equipment or fall stuff. That stuff resides over in those brown areas up in the top of the screen, and that's all got wood chips under it.
Yeah, I think I'm remembering years ago, we had a huge, it was like walking on the moon. You really did get a bounce off of it, but I understand that's now all gone, okay. And now the blue over at Wayne is all asphalt, everything in these pictures.
Yeah, so
Okay.
the one thing, if you look at the picture on the screen now on the left, that square in there is tiles, like rubberized tiles. So there is a little section in there that has a rubber surface on it.
Okay,
Those
It's very hard,
tiles,
though. It's
those
very
tiles,
hard.
yeah,
okay. And you're going to keep that?
we're
No.
proposing to get rid of that.
Okay.
For maintenance, the administration at the building doesn't want it anymore.
Okay.
It's been a problem. And that product, again, is very susceptible to the snow, the ice, the freeze, the thaw.
Okay. I just wanted to get up to speed with all this. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, I have a few questions.
Richard, go ahead.
Is the asphalt going to, like, having to resurface it going to be like a common occurrence? Are we gonna have to do this every a couple years with the same amount of money being spent?
Oh, good. That's a great question. No. And back to Mrs. Stern's comment, I'm bringing up this slide here because it highlights those two asphalt repaving areas. Those numbers, $125,000, $102,000, if we get into a program, which we intend to do, where we can keep paint on it, reseal it. If we reseal it every couple of years, we're going to get a lot more lifetime. We've never had a program of sealing our parking lots. We're wanting to get into that so that when we do mill, where we pull off about 1.5 inches, 2 inches of surface and redo it, that we're going to go back with a new product and then protect it.
Okay.
So it should last a lot longer.
Okay.
And so the surfacing at Radnor Elementary, for example, that's 21 years old now. So even if we didn't do our job and maintain it, we're going to another 20
It's
years
still a
out.
while, yes.
Yeah.
And then going back to the gym, like, floor refinishing.
Sure.
Am I wrong, or did we refinish the main gym in the high school only a few years ago? So may I ask why there's a need to refinish it again? Because it's only been a few years, right?
It's,
And I
well,
know it's more inclusive now with the back gym and the elementary schools and stuff, but I was just wondering about the main
no,
gym.
that's a great question. We should expect to do maintenance coats on it. That's what we're going to do at
Okay.
the other gyms. So maintenance coats would be where you scratch off the top and put a maintenance coat on it.
Okay.
This is going down through all the levels of surfacing of the polyurethane, taking the paint off and redoing it. That probably was done within the last, I think, 6 years or so, and you would expect to get 10 years out of it. One of the reasons, though, is when we rebranded and took the Raider name out of everything.
Is it still on the
Well, no, we took that out, but we only refinished the areas that
had
we had
that.
that on it. So that's one thing. And the surface was flaking and prematurely breaking down. Not sure what the cause of that was. So it did, the last job we did not last as long as we thought it would.
Okay.
So it was for a combination of things. So it's a great question. The hope is that this gets done and lasts for 10 years with just maintenance coats on it.
Okay. And then going back to the Central League branding, I know in other schools the, I guess, decor of it is usually just banners of whatever high schools are in it, and it's just hung up on the wall. Were they planning to do that, or like you said, they were adding detailing to the floors?
It's language, and I have to be careful because I don't know exactly what it is right now. It is not like we would be putting other schools on our floor. It's not that.
And-
That stays with our banners
Oh,
around
I was
the
going to say,
perimeter.
we have the logos of the schools on our.
We do, and that would remain. That's
Okay.
not what this would be. This is just it's words. It's literally words. And it's not other teams. I think it's just some Central League language.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
That's all I have. Thank you.
And I know there's a second piece to this presentation. I don't have, the only question that I have, and I'm hoping that we'll get to it, is how, and we may have already talked about this at the last meeting. Everything is becoming a blur now that it's summertime. But just how we're going to pay for it, like out of our capital fund. And perhaps Mr. Pauling can kind of enlighten us as far as that's concerned. And then, whether it be now or after this second piece of the presentation.
I won't change the name tag because I was expecting Mr. Buchtel to come up. But, yeah, so when we talked last month, we had presented a kind of a game plan to utilize capital reserve funds. So between what we presented, so this is $1 million. Right now, we have approximately $17 million in our capital funds between what we have in the reserve fund itself and what we've committed in the general fund that we just haven't transferred yet. So that will more than cover the $1 million or so that we talked about tonight of projects that we want to have done over the next year. So between end of the year replenishment with any excess funds we have in the general fund that we would want to allocate, the transfers that we already have committed for now that we may utilize for debt for ITHN, so at least in the next couple years, we have some money already in the general fund committed for transfers. We have a pretty good game plan to pay for a lot of projects like this over the next couple years by spending some of it down, but then being budget-wise and knowing we only have so much to replenish it with. And then when we get to some of the bigger projects, like the high school roof, if we can't parse that out into phases or depending on what the cost is at the time, that may be something we look to borrow funds for because it's more of a significant cost than what some of these smaller projects will be. So we think we have a good game plan, but that's why it's also going to be fluid. And so when we come back in the fall with what we're going to start to propose for 24-25, I'll give an update, and by then I'll probably have some numbers at the end of the year of what we may have to allocate additional funds. And I had also talked about we have some other fund balances for pension costs that we've just never utilized. So that's some fund balances that we may be able to utilize for projects as well. So I feel comfortable with what we have over the next couple of years, but also knowing there's going to be some bigger things we'll have to have a conversation about down the road.
Great, thank you very much. Okay. Turn it back to you to move on to the library.
Okay, thank you. And as Dan comes up, I will exit this and bring up another.
All right. Good evening, everyone. How are you?
Evening.
Okay, so I'm very excited to present this this next refresh to the high school library. So, Bill, if you could go to the next slide, we've got the agenda. I'm going to run really quickly through the background, a little bit about the library as far as usage, what we're looking at for the refresh itself, the steps that we've taken to investigate this, and then show you some renderings and the cost options that we kicked around. So if we go to the next slide, the background, this has been something that's been a long time coming. As a former high school administrator, I remember speaking about this back during the 2014-2015 school year, and there was money earmarked, and there was discussions that took place then in September of 2015 to really redo the library carpet. So the library had its last real update in 1999, and even back in 2015, it was showing signs of wear. And so back when Leo Burnaby was here, we had $40,000 that was split over 2 different years in the capital plan. That was ended up being postponed. As part of the technology audit, we were traveling around to look at a number of different schools. We saw some libraries and really dug into some ideas about what a whole library revamp and remodel would look like. And so as we went through that process, this gained some traction. We had students get involved. We looked at 3 different vendors, and by the spring of 2019, we had $250,000 earmarked in the capital plan for the 2020-2021 school year. Then, as we got into 2019-2020, the administration realized that there was a number of competing capital projects. We had some expansion of enrollment. We were looking at a revamp of the high school with the ADA project, and so the district pushed pause on this to look at a long-term capital plan. And then this year, as we went through the needs for the different buildings and looked at the different capital improvements that we were looking at, one of the things that came up was the high school library. And the library is really the hub of the school. And on the bottom left, you'll see what appears to be a whole bunch of tiny indiscernible charts if you are looking at it from far away. And what I can tell you is that this, we keep a lot of analytics on our library. Ms. Wetzel, as our librarian, does a really fantastic job of having students sign in when they come out. And so when we do presentations like this, it's really easy to see that we have 134,521 student visits per school year. If you break that down over 180 days, it comes out to an average of 747 students per day that are coming through our library. She also broke down and took a snapshot of the month of May for us, and you can see that the high point for the month of May, we had 846 students in the library on May 18th this year. At the top right, we did have a video. Unfortunately, we're having some issues with the video, but at the bottom right, you can see a static picture of the library with a number of students in there. And as we go through and look at the library, as I said previously, was really last updated in 1999. We've got dated seating. We've got furnishings that are in need of constant repair. We have carpeting that is fraying, and the carpeting that you see on the right, you can tell at the corner that it is fraying, but that is actually a flap that we've glued that thing probably a dozen times over the last 3 years, you could pull that back about 2.5 feet. And so it is certainly, the carpet is something that is still in need of being addressed. Here's some additional pictures. We just looked at this. When you walk through the high school library, there are certainly opportunities for reorganization and to address some of the datedness of the carpet and the wear it's taken over time. Additional pictures of some of the carpet fraying and some of the, one of the things I'll say about this picture in the middle is our students today, as opposed to 20 years ago, they all have multiple devices. So trying to work and find ways to provide them access so they can charge their devices, because really it's a tool that they use in the classroom, it's a tool that they use to study. And so revamping the library with an eye towards the students of 2020 and beyond. This was a video. Unfortunately, again, the videos aren't working, but this at the end of last school year, a group of students from student government at Radnor High School approached the Radnor Educational Foundation and wrote a grant, and REF awarded them $8,000 to get library seating. And so we've got Mrs. Wetzel here sitting in one of those brand new seats. And this is our Zen Den here. The furniture that we're looking at, which we'll see in the upcoming renderings, is the same company and is the same type of seating that we're looking to get. And before I move on, I'll just say special shout out to REF. I know the students really love those seating, and so thank you, REF, for supporting our students in our school. So this spring, we pulled together a steering committee, knowing that we were going to look in earnest at the library refresh, and so we had a variety of different administrators on there, and Mrs. Wetzel, to really look at what this would take. And one of the first things we decided to do was to get student feedback. So we surveyed our students, we engaged the student government, and on the left you see some of the favorite parts of the library, things that they, as we look through a refresh, they'd like us to keep. Two main pieces were they thought the library was a warm and welcoming environment. They really liked going there, and they wanted to make sure that any type of revamp of it would continue to have the same ambiance. And the second part was they really liked the seating that REF gave us as part of the Zen Den. You'll see the swivel chairs in there a bunch of times, and so they said if you're going to revamp it, please have comfy chairs in there.
Bridget is nodding her head.
Yes, I never see those seats not taken up by a numerous group of students all wanting to sit in them. And I know in the black box where we had viewpoints this year, we also had the seats in there. And if we were watching a movie or doing just free work time, once again, those seats were always taken up. They're very nice.
All right. Thank you.
We're considering getting them for the board room next year. Because, comfort for a long meeting.
All right, the next slide, we've got suggestions for from the students, from their feedback, and it really came down to a couple different things they were looking at. Number one was comfortable seating, and number two was making sure that there was a opportunities for both quiet, independent work as well as collaborative areas. And so as we went through this process and talked about with the steering committee, throughout the planning process, we identified different areas that would serve as quiet study areas as well as areas that could be collaborative areas. And so as part of this, we're looking at a revamp of the Writing Center, which could serve as a quiet study area, as well as there's an old periodical room in the back corner of the room that we're looking to revamp as well to be a quiet study area for students. So what we did was Mrs. Wetzel and Mrs. Kevgis took a group of students from the student government over to Corbett. We did receive quotes from a couple different companies. We gave these companies the feedback from the students, and then we had students test out the chairs. And so here's some of our students on the bottom left testing out the seats. And then after they tested out the seats, then based on that feedback, we received a number of different renderings, and you can see one of the renderings in the bottom right-hand corner of this slide. Zooming in on some of the 3D images, we have comfortable seating throughout on the top left, and then going clockwise. One of the things I'll point out at the top right, you can see it appears there are TV screens on the walls. There are U-shaped group project areas there where students can plug in and they could work on a presentation or something like that in a small group. There in the bottom right, you will see a cafe-style seating area, and this is going to be one of the areas that students could work in groups. And then you've got the bottom left. This is the Writing Center revamp, which is a quiet work area for students if they need to get things done quietly. So we looked at the options and the cost. We got a quote on carpet replacement and the new furniture. And as administration, we looked at a couple different options for upgrading the high school library. One would be that we would complete it all this summer. One would be that we would space it out over 3 years using capital funds. And the third one would be that we would use capital funds, but we would work with REF, the PTO, and work to repurpose some of the existing furniture, possibly from the black box, to go and reduce the total expenditure. In the end, the administration is going to be recommending number one. So you had Mr. Pauling come up here and talk. So we are looking to make the recommendation that we would complete this project this summer with board approval at the business meeting.
Is that it? Great, thank you so much for that presentation. I'll turn it over to my fellow board members if they have any specific questions. Ms. Solomon?
So, while you were talking, it occurred to me, and I think you answered my question, it sounds like we need more space for this critical hub of the school. But, so just tell me again where you're taking some of that space from?
Certainly. If you walk into the library and you're coming in through the main doors,
Right.
and you go to the left,
Yeah.
there is a gigantic circulation desk.
The circulation desk.
That circulation desk will no longer be there.
Okay.
And so one of the things that we will be doing is we'll be spreading out and using that area. And we'll also be, so trying to use every single square foot, like the periodical room that is behind, I'm trying to think, where we had the legislative breakfast.
Yes.
Behind that wall,
The far.
there is
left.
a very large unused periodical room. So one of the things that we're looking to do to create a quiet study area for students is put seating in there as well, and also have them be able to go in there. So that would have us putting some glass windows in there so employees could see in there for supervision, but also have seating in there. So meeting the students when they're saying quiet study areas and really enhancing the use of the writing center for students. So it's not just I only go in there when I write. It's going to be a quiet study / writing center area.
So there'll be two quiet areas, this revamped periodical room and the writing center.
That is correct.
Okay. I love this. Okay. This is new. I didn't know all these details, but yeah, looks really exciting.
Great. Ms. Dunn?
I also think this looks great, and I have spent enough time in the library in the last few years to know you really need it. The only concerns I had, one, I feel like there are a lot fewer bookcases in this picture than there are in the existing library. Where are all those books going?
So we one of the things that we've done is we've really made best use of the space, because when you look at the spacing in the library, we used to have VHS, then we used to have DVDs, and then we used to have magazines. We have a lot of things that have gone digital.
Yeah.
We had a lot of reference material that was, you checked out a huge volume. And so one of the things that the librarians in all of our buildings has been doing is going through and refreshing and updating the catalog, and we've expanded significantly the digital books. We still will have plenty of books in there, but we're looking at really making sure that we are maximizing the use of our space. I can tell you that the DVDs that used to be along the wall in the area that we had where the legislative breakfast is, now they're all in the back other corner, and so really just moving things around and maximizing the use of the space.
Okay. I know I've said this a million times, so I know you know I'm going to say it. I like books on paper. So I know I'm not worried about DVDs because everybody can get those somewhere electronically, or VHS tapes, but I feel like books matter. The other question I had, and it was just an observation, I was thinking about the way the carpet looked, and I happened to be looking at these pictures. The chairs on rollers, are we not worried about whether they will
Pull and drag.
pull and affect the new carpet?
So
And I know my office chair in my office has rollers on carpets, but I know it also grinds the floor a little.
right now, so if you could just stay right there, Mr. Dolan. Right now, we've got a island of misfit toys of chairs that are in there. We have some that are on rollers. We have those rockers there, and those rockers slide very nicely. But then we also
fun.
have, we also have old school classroom desks. We have some that just have like four-pointed chairs. And so we, working with Corbett, we believe that the casters on the chairs are going to be able to allow for us to set up and break down the library, move around, and have students be able to be mobile and comfortable at the same time.
Okay. You know they're going to race them.
I anticipate that Miss Wetzel is going to be up to the challenge.
She's great. I also want to thank you for this level of detail. I know this is more, a really big school district that has, 6 or 7 high schools is not getting this level of detail. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun.
Thank you. Thank you for the meeting last week. Thank you for these pictures. They say the whole story. Are we going to have some, can't remember, are we going to have some stand-up desks that if students want to stand up with their computer? Stand-up desks are like a whole thing now, where they can rise and come up and down. I'm really glad that you're looking into utilizing that storage room for the quiet space, so thank you. I'm really hopeful. I understand that Radnor's color is maroon, but I'm really happy to see that we're going to try to bring a different color in with the blue, with the gray and the blue chairs. It's okay to change our color every 23 years. And Ms. Monahan saw me cringing at those extension cords and surge protectors. I can trip over anything, so I would be the one. Those are just such a hazard to me that I'm thrilled you're doing this, and thank you for bringing it to us, and I hope we can find a way to put a lot of electrical outlets in places that are safe and make sense for the students, so that we don't see cords. And I'm fully in support of option 1. We need to get this done. It's clear to me, and I really appreciate the analytics that Mrs. Wetzel does. This room is hugely used, and really, we need the space at the high school. And I'm so glad that the place the students want to hang out is the library, and I do agree with Ms. Dunn about books. But great, weed through the DVDs. They can watch those online. Thank you so much.
Ms. Walsh?
Yes, the power outlets are definitely a concern of mine. Being in the library so often, I've definitely noticed that we need more. It's really in that section where we had the legislative breakfast. There are a few of the poles that have outlets, but other than that, there are not many places. Like, we have them under tables, but nowadays most of them do not work, or the chargers fall out easily, and we only really have one like charging station, and it's on the very other side of the library where the writing center and the not periodical, but like the historical, the archive room is. So definitely more of those, because the power outlets, having the extension cords is not not fun at all. But yes, I'm very excited. This looks really good. I'm also very happy about the quiet centers, because a lot of people don't realize that the writing center is a quiet space to work, but because it's called the writing center, no one uses it, no one goes in there. But also, I agree that
Nobody's writing in.
well, if they do, they're there for a few minutes and then leave to go work on it on their own. And I'm glad we're getting more space for it as well. And this looks really good. I'm excited.
So in summary, I think I support it as well. I mean, libraries are near and dear to my heart. I'm the daughter of a school librarian. So I was admittedly shocked when I took a tour last week with Ms. Stern, going through and seeing, you know, the disrepair, or perhaps I should spin this a positive way, the amazing talent that our librarians have in making this such a livable, homey space for the students. So, and knowing that it hasn't been updated since 1999 is pretty shocking. So I think this is well overdue. Okay, thank you so much for coming to present this. Okay. Okay, so with that, I will move on to the next agenda item. I think we're good to do that. All right, 4.03, the RHS Accessibility and Wellness Project Change Order Approval at Level 4. The recommended action is that the following change order for the Radnor High School Accessibility and Wellness Project be moved to the full board at the June 27, 2023 regular business meeting for approval as prescribed by the authorization process, approved at the April 27, 2021 business meeting. And this is a credit change order, so we will be getting this back, correct?
Don't fall out of your seats, your swivel chairs. It is. This is a good sign that we're coming. We did check with our solicitor, and any change order in the positive or the negative direction at that level has to come to the board. So, but this is very simple. At the end of a project, when you have allowances left over, and this is a change order PC. You're not used to seeing that. PC is plumbing contractor 04. So this is only the fourth one from the plumber. And we do have allowances left over at the end from our plumbing project. If you recall, most of the plumbing was indoor stuff, so we didn't have to do a lot of site work with the plumber. Some. Biggest change order that we saw from the plumber was when we redid the pool deck drains around the perimeter. So that was one of them. But this is basically crediting back now that they're finished their work and their punch list. There are a few punch list items, but they're finishing their work. This is the balance left on the allowances, so they're just crediting it back to us. So it's as simple as that.
Great. Any questions on that?
Let's work with them again.
I wondered
Okay.
about that. The only quick question I have, you mentioned the plumbing. Have we finished the punch list in the concession booth?
No, we have not.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, any final public comment in the audience? Seeing none, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much.
Great.